Hey, everybody, we are back for another episode of the Alfie Whattam Technology Podcast. Today, I'm joined by two heads of software development and engineering that have actually been on the podcast before. I will give them both an opportunity to introduce themselves. Adrian, do you want to kick us off? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what your background is, please.
So I come from a very technical background. I'm currently a software development manager in IBM. I used to be a developer, then a system tester and a performance engineer. And I recently, 6 months ago, moved into a software development management role at IBM Hersley.
Awesome. Cool, man. Cool. And Giulio?
Hi everyone, I'm Giulio, working in Cloud and C as a senior software manager. Essentially, I come from a technical background myself in the past, mainly embedded software engineering. By a few years, I am looking after the teams. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming back on. If people want to check out your individual episodes, if you search the guests' names on Spotify, you'll find their individual episodes from a few weeks and a few months ago on the podcast. But before we get into it today, just a quick shout out, of course, to the people that make the podcast happen. Alpha Technology. If you're looking to hire software developers across London, the UK, or remote, really, then go to welovealpha.com now, and we have the engineers that you need to grow your team and scale your business. So the reason for getting everybody together today is some pretty breaking news in the terms of cutting edge technologies, in terms of the metaverse. Our good friend, Mr. Zuck, has revealed the new Quest Pro VR headset, which a lot of people are saying is potentially one of the biggest tech breakthroughs in a long time, comparing it to the iPhone for smartphones, comparing it to Tesla for EVs, and obviously a lot of criticism as well. Some people think it's absolutely terrible and the graphics are choppy and it's a work in progress. But regardless of how you look at this, he's unveiled the new headset. It's the Quest Pro, an online event held specifically for devs, with the price tag being £1,500. Though it's almost 4 times the price as the Quest 2, which starts at $399. It's much better though. Obviously, it's got thinner lenses, a curved battery around the head strap at the back. The controllers are basically like computers in themselves, and they track with cameras where everything's at. And it's got much more capability from a mixed reality perspective, much better graphics, much better specs, and obviously it looks a lot cooler as well than the old one. And just for comparison purposes, this is the old one, or the current one rather, which I was given early, and I was very grateful to have a chance to play around with this when it first came out. It's amazing, but the new one's 40% thinner, much better specs, much better graphics, and be keen to delve into all of that with you two today. So what do you chaps think about this? If we start with yourself, Adrian, what's your take on the new headset, on Metaverse, on VR, AR, and that kind of whole world in general, really?
I mean, first of all, the price is shocking.
It's high, right?
When I've actually watched something of a video online about this, and the highest spec Quest 2, you can buy, I think that's $500, is it not? So you can buy 3 of them for the price of one, right? Yeah. And I think their main, the metaverse, where Zuckerberg is trying to kind of take metaverse is kind of into the office space. And I feel like companies now having to spend 3 times more than the most expensive previous version is a lot, and I don't think that's an incentive for them to kind of spend that much money on it, right?
Yeah.
In saying that, I think this is still kind of work in progress. There are still potential issues with the current one and then with the new one that's coming out, right? So are people willing to spend that much money on something that they haven't really played around with too much? I'm not quite sure. We'll see what happens, but like Giulio mentioned that Facebook is having some financial kind of difficulties.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I wish them luck, but
it's a high price, isn't it, mate?
Yes.
You're not wrong. I think that they're targeting it at super users that want to see what's possible in VR, because it really shows the current cutting edge in terms of everything that can be done. And I suppose their ethos is that the price will come down over time, like everything does. But it is expensive. But right now, you are spot on. And Giulio, what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the price tag is very steep, and especially in this time of crisis. I don't think it's a tool that can be used in the office at all. Honestly, a whiteboard with people around it, or even a virtual whiteboard, is
Sure.
beat this thing. I don't know how many times. At the same time, like we have, I think in the years we realize that hardware is important, but also the software, like the functionalities that you give with this hardware, and I don't think they are there, right? So the main thing I've seen is like it allows you to see what's around you with some camera or some space on the goggles, so you can like move around without smashing yourself in a wall or some objects. But still, like how you use it, I mean, mainly I just see myself playing with it, and also I don't like playing with VR for various reasons. So I really think it's a desperate move for a company that somehow is spiraling down. I mean, personally, I don't see it compelling at all. And I cannot see anyone using it for anything other than game.
Okay, gaming's definitely the current focus, right? That is where they're targeting at, and then trying to enter more and more sectors. I suppose if we look a decade ahead from now, when the tech is perhaps more widely used and people are potentially using it on a daily basis, where do you see, in terms of sectors, this affecting? You had Adrian, you thought maybe you'll be using it in the office. Giulio, you thought maybe it's more gaming focused. But what kind of sectors in general do you think it's going to touch upon? What do you think, Adrian?
So I think Zuckerberg is mainly kind of aiming potentially at the office, right? Because he has a lot of competition everywhere else. For example, Microsoft, right? They have Activision, they have Minecraft, and they have a massive group of users that are using like to play the games that Microsoft kind of owns, and or even Minecraft, they create various maps and various own games, so that they have that user base to kind of back them up. So if he's gonna try and aim from the games side, he's gonna have a lot of competition against him, right? So I think he's also trying to get quite a lot of that market from the kind of office-based side. I've watched a few videos of Zuckerberg, and he was kind of trying to say, yeah, we could do our own work in the future and kind of have birthday parties in Metaverse and that kind of stuff. But we'll see where it goes. But I think if he approaches it from the game side, that he's definitely going to have a lot of difficulty of trying to win the market there. Because of other companies.
An interesting thing, Adrian, that most people don't realize, I don't know if they talk about this stat enough, this model sold more units than the Xbox did last year, which for most people to hear is a bit crazy. I think they were selling it at a very low price. It might have been a loss leader to get people into the hardware, and then they make the money on the software afterwards. That's probably the reason. But
I wonder how much those sales are related to people forced at home because of lockdown and things, and how many people nowadays are willing to living a virtual world.
That's also kind of what I wanted to say. How many people actually actively use that headset? Because I have because I have number of friends that even though they would buy the PlayStation VR headset, right? They barely use it. They'll play the actual PlayStation game on their TV 50 times more than they would use the VR headset. And consider the fact that there's not much you can do on it. You're not going to spend a lot of time on it, right? I think one of the main reasons why VR is not used as much is because the games on them, there's not as many, and they're not as good as just on a normal TV, right? So I think there's a lot of potential pitfalls there.
One of the issues is you go into a room and there's 5 people, and that's not enough for it to be sticky for you to keep coming back to. But what do you think, Giulio, in terms of kind of the sectors that it can affect, and I suppose the fact that people aren't just sticking around a lot of the time on it?
So yeah, I've seen a news like Microsoft is investing Team to be used as the Quest Pro, and again, I don't think it's something that actually will take. So Microsoft is diversifying the investments. That's fine, but in terms of practicality, I don't. I mean, as a manager, I see my team getting a lot of benefit coming to the office every now and then,
Yeah.
and meeting together. I cannot see this happening. Like, I don't see the benefit of having, spending a lot of money for each employee and then having this kind of virtual world is not the same. Like, I don't know. It's just like weird.
Sure.
It's not what people would like to see. And yeah, and even in the best cases, you replicate reality.
Yes.
You don't get like in the end.
It's still not reality, is it?
Exactly.
It's still fake. What about if we go really immersive though? Because I know, Adrian, we were speaking the other day about the Tesla suits, for example. And if you just take the headset, it's a headset. But if you also put on a suit which has haptic feedback, so if you get touched on the left shoulder in VR, you feel it. And I know we were talking, Adrian, about if someone shot you in VR, you could feel the intensity. And I've had that on a boxing game. I had it with gloves as well, VR gloves I was wearing, and I could feel the difference between picking up an apple and a pen. There was a different weight to it almost in the game. So when you apply all of that, and I don't know if you chaps have seen the 360-degree treadmills before, but that allows you to walk in or run or crouch or jump in any direction. You'll stay in the same place physically, but on the headset you'll be moving around a virtual office or world or game or whatever. And when you apply all of that stuff, couple of years ahead from now, do you think people will be using it on a more regular basis? A couple of hours a day, perhaps. What do you think?
I think there's definitely quite a big, well, there's going to be customers that are going to want to do that. After COVID, I started to realize that more and more people, there's quite a few people which kind of lock themselves in the house and spend the entire time in their house, where, especially people that love games, they will kind of, order food to their house, kind of have their own entertainment in the house, and barely. There was a lot of friends that I had which which were complaining about not having the ability to leave the house, but they had friends which just want to stay in their house, and they barely left their house during COVID, right? So it's all about who prefers what, right? In saying that, I'm quite against it, because I see myself quite as an extroverted person. I think my friends and having the face-to-face interaction, not only with everyone that reports to me, but my friends and family. Without that, are we not just computers in a matrix somewhere, and we might as well spend our entire life in this little box with food being delivered to our house?
That's Zuckerberg's vision, isn't it? But I agree with you. It's not quite what I would want to do every single day all the time. A few hours here and there, perhaps. What do you think, Giulio? Do you think it will be used on a by the general public, on a mass adoption?
Look, I'm fully agree with the social aspect is not ideal, but I want to explore a bit more also the video game aspect and challenges, because I am a game developer myself in my spare time, so I like to explore these options. Like, if we look at the virtual reality games that we have today, they are mainly static games where you can walk around, turn around, or essentially you are doing actions on the spot. Like, there could be punches or tennis, but you don't actually need to go around.
Yeah.
But let's take a game like Uncharted, where you are supposed to jump, run, dodge, and do crazy moves. How people do it actually expect to play those games? That's a huge technical issue. Just how implementing this kind of movement set in a virtual reality, and how I can see them now implemented. It's just like exactly as you're playing on a normal screen, just by having the commands on your hands, like with the kind of pads they gave you. But there is no actual real change in how this game interacts with the player. So it's just like a visualization change. Like you feel to be in the scene, but actually you're just sitting on your chair on your sofa and you're just playing Uncharted as you were playing with the normal gamepad. So I don't think there is nowadays an understanding of how actually we can do any game that fully exploit the virtual reality thing. And I remember when I was a kid, I'm quite old now, when I was put on the VR for Doom, the first one.
Okay.
Many years ago. So there were this kind of things that you were moving around with your left hand, you were shooting with your right hand, and that was it. And I don't see any difference in today's game. Like we are 30 years later and exactly the same thing, better graphic and things. But mainly what you can do is exactly the same, moving around and do some very simple actions.
Yeah.
So that will be a huge game design problem to solve. And I don't think that there is anything close to it.
It reminds me of the old quote that we wanted flying cars and instead we got 140 characters. It's the tech adoption, some areas it's killed it, some other areas it's plateaued. Okay, I had a similar experience, Giulio, with this when I was just the other day. I tried to watch a full movie on the Netflix app in VR, and I'll be honest, about halfway through, I turned it off and started watching it on my TV because it was the same experience as you said. And unless I believe VR needs a killer app, like you know, the smartphone had apps, and that was the thing that differentiated it from the BlackBerry keyboard, for example. When VR has a killer app on it, you know, maybe that replaces your smartphone or AR, you get something a little bit simpler like this, what Apple are working on. Then maybe that will be the gateway drug to full VR, if that makes sense. So, what about from a regulation perspective? This is a really interesting question. Do you think there should be any, I'd say, government regulation at all within the metaverse? Because sometimes I think probably not, but it's a private company. But, you know, with personal data, with deep fakes, with privacy concerns, then maybe if people are spending a lot of their time in this, should there be laws to it? Should there be rules, regulations, not just set by Meta, but by the government? It's a hard question to answer, but Adrian, have you got any thoughts at all on that sort of thing?
So we obviously know that the internet has its dark sides, right? Yeah. And I think parents currently have a massive challenge of trying to keep their kids out of those dark sides, right? But when you have certain suits where you can feel things and then you can just put this on, there definitely has to be some kind of regulations to ensure that certain children can't access certain areas, because it'll be horrible, right? Imagine a 12-year-old kid entering some kind of a very dark humor kind of zone in VR, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so that could be quite interesting, and there's definitely going to have to be some kind of controls in there, and then especially I actually think that, you know, NTFs, right? You know, like creating your own kind of art. So let's say avatar of you. That could. I mean, how do you control it, right? How you have to. People would be able to kind of sell their own avatars on there if it becomes successful. But, you know, how do you control that money flow? And well, you know, NTFs are quite hard for it, right? And, you know, the whole potential tax evasions or anything relating to that, there's that the government, if this becomes quite successful, I think that government is definitely going to have to implement some kind of laws in a load of different areas, which they might not be aware of right now, in order to kind of keep the users secure, especially with data as well, right?
Yeah. What do you think, Giulio?
Yes, regulation is a problem, and in both sense, like we have more and more regulations everywhere. But if it's become a virtual world, there will be abuse. There will be, you know, in any kind of abuse or you know, like breaking laws. Taxes, I think, is a very good point. We have, you know, corporation evading taxes or having this offshore headquarters. So everything should be regulated as well. But with the regulation, will also come like restrictions. So again, this will work against the virtual world, right?
Yes.
So then that come the question: what you can do, what you cannot do, what is ethical, what is not ethical. So is a massive burden also for the company to deal with all this. You know, because in the end, if they really manage to create let's say a world like Matrix, then everything could happen there. And
I mean, mental health is definitely going to be also a massive problem in here, right? I mean, you could be stuck in that universe for days on end, and if there's nothing that stops you from being there for 24 hours a day potentially, and you enter these dark kind of places in this world that, you know, we can create anything that we want in there, you won't even know that someone has a serious mental health problem because they're constantly in their house, locked away in a room, right?
Yeah.
So
We need the balance, don't we? We can't be living in this world. It's not going to be that healthy. I'm trying to think of a great question to kind of summarize this, and the best one that I can come up with is if you both had a big pile of chips, poker chips, money, whatever you want, and you had to bet on red is in 5 years everyone's using one of these every day for a couple of hours, or AR, a combination of the two of them for work, for gaming, for life. Red is we're using it in 5 years. Black is it's a fad. It goes away. We're not. It doesn't work out. If you had to bet that money, Adrian, are you betting on red or black? What do you think?
I don't think it will be. And not everyone's going to be using it in 5 years, so probably red.
Okay, so, the other way, black.
Oh, the other way, yes.
Okay, no problem. And Giulio, what do you think?
Oh, I guess the same. I would bet
Okay,
on black. I don't think. Of course, there will be someone that use it, but will not be widespread. No.
Okay, I think from a VR perspective, I think there's a very, very good chance you're both right. I think with AR, with something a little bit thinner, this is more accessible. If you get a notification popping up and it says, you know, turn right to go to that destination with maps or a text, and you can just use Siri or whatever and tell it to go away. I think that's a little bit more easier for people to swallow. Strapping on this onto your face 5 hours a day, you both are probably right. It probably will take a while to get that mass adoption going and that sort of thing. Okay, cool. Well, thank you both for coming on. It was good to get your perspective into what's happening at the moment. Regardless of how you look at the metaverse, it's certainly, if not the biggest kind of tech topic that everyone's talking about at the moment, certainly one of the biggest. So, yeah, it'd be good to get you guys back on again to do another one of these in the future. But thanks very much for sharing your insights into VR, into AR, into the metaverse, and into the world of Zuck. And we'll see what happens. Let's find out.
Thanks, Alfie, for the time.
Thank you.
Nice
Thanks,
to meet
Adrian. Thanks,
Adrian.
Cool.
Bye-bye.